You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
A kiss, as defined by Dan Webster, is something pleasing, a caress, a gentle touch. But there's another kiss that isn't in Webster's.
Hey world, we're kids!
Some critics say they don't make music, they just make noise.
Yeah, Kiss sucks!
Kiss implies the extreme in the theatrics on stage, utilizing fire and smoke and bizarre costumes, and the ever-consistent, constant concealment of their true identities.
Speaking of which, Kiss is going to have its own comic book soon.
Take Kiss with you. It's fun. Show your friends and be the first. Now.
Oh my God, no time to turn!
And welcome to No Time to Turn, a Kiss nerd podcast.
Nerds. And at the time of this recording, a very happy 70th birthday to one Paul Stanley.
Hey, that's true.
70.
Yep.
The magic number. I don't know why I say that.
I mean, nope, there are no old rock stars anymore, I guess. I mean, yeah, they're technically old, but, you know, everybody that's 70 years old is still kind of touring.
70 is kind of like the new 50, really.
Right?
I mean, it is. It kind of sort of is. It's like when I was a kid, a 70-year-old was like a senior fucking citizen, old. Now you look at like someone like Paul Stanley and you're like, he's not that old.
No.
You know?
He's old, but he's not that old.
Yeah, so it's really not, you realize that that's kind of like, that's a number is really just a number.
Mm-hmm.
Really is.
Because Mick and Keith still tour and everything,
exactly.
And that's just the standard now. Everybody's like, well, I'm going to keep touring until, whenever their due date is.
Keith looks old.
Yeah. Well, Keith looked old for like 40 years.
But Nick looks great. And it's weird. You have to stop and go, God damn, how old is that motherfucker?
Pushing 80.
I thought you were about to say, God damn, homie.
Anyway, I kind of stumbled in. I said, no time to turn. and so let me start over. It's No Time to Turn. And as always, I am joined by Cap and Alex from the Something Good For You podcast.
Yo.
And we are tracking down the history of Kiss album by album, year by year, blah, 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 blah. We are not experts. We do not claim to be. And we're just kind of going along and gathering information and just jibber-jabbering about it. And hopefully y'all have been along for the ride. I know we've had a pretty good response so far.
Oh, yes.
And we're really happy that everyone that has commented or reached out to us or messaged us or whatever, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And give us a rating on any of the podcast platforms you're listening to us on, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, any of that stuff. And
preferably a good rating.
Yeah. Honest. I'm not gonna fish.
I'm just kidding. Let them, give us a bad rating if you think it's bad. It's our show, so fuck you.
I still want to know what we're missing half the time because, it is a nerd podcast. We wanted to do all the details.
Yeah, and we did. We've been told we're not nerdy enough.
I know. I love it. I love that. Okay. That's like some of the best criticism I've gotten.
Well, that's what's cool, kind of, or maybe not cool in a weird or whatever way you want to look at it with Kiss fans. Because they're Kiss. They're not fans. They're nerds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Know, they're like the Star Trek version or the rock and roll version of Star Trek fans.
It really is.
But well, you know what? Speaking of nerd, we're going to look at the album Music from the Elder.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps Kiss's nerdiest record.
Very much so.
Yeah, now that I think about it, you're pretty on the spot with that one.
We're taking out the fuck me, suck me songs, and then, as Bob Ezrin would say, and replacing them with a concept.
So, I guess we kind of came out of 1980 with the Australian tour, which is the absolute pinnacle of their success anywhere in the world, really.
Yep.
Well, I guess they might still get one little last gasp here in the next year or two, but we'll get to that on another episode. But by and large, the fad is over. We've talked about that, and it really is the end of an era because Peter has left, and they've brought in Eric Carr, so there is change.
And Dynasty is well as it was doing, like, say, Australia, well as Kiss was doing in Australia and places like that, Dynasty was not selling well at all either, or not to their standards.
Well, they did well in Australia, and then of course Unmasked was huge in Australia.
That's what I meant, Unmasked. Yeah.
And then they're coming off of, but the Unmasked was a complete bomb in America.
Yeah.
They don't even tour America for Unmasked, and they're not going to tour America for this, but we'll get to that. And just to reiterate, I don't know if we brought this up in the last episode, but they renegotiated their contract with Bill Aucoin, and he's now on a year-to-year contract.
Right.
So, he's getting reviewed every year. And I guess they're kind of seeing the for lack of a better word, I mean, let's be honest, it's a failure. Unmasked, they're seeing that and thinking, maybe we went too far into a pop kind of feel here. So the idea is they're going to return to their straightforward rock approach.
Yep.
And in spring of 1981, they returned to the studio to work on new material, and allegedly, I guess, they track a few songs and are unhappy with them. I don't know. You know
I've
what? This is where I'm going to start getting kind of fuzzy. This is where I'm going to start forfeiting my Kiss nerd points, because once we get into the 80s, I kind of checked out. So is there? Does any of that exist? Is there?
I don't think any of that necessarily exists. I know that there is hours upon hours upon hours of Elder demo content out there. I remember downloading that years ago and listening to it just on my iPod. I mean, it would be like 10 different takes of World Without Heroes backing track, so it's like there's a ton of demo-y stuff out there, including the Don't Run Dark Light version. But I think all of that was done in that sending tapes back and forth era, which we'll get into.
Right.
Well, before we even get to that, I mean, let's get into what made them kind of switch tracks here and decide to go for a concept album, because the idea here is that they need a more grand approach. It can't be just another album. They've done the hard rock thing. They've done the kind of hard pop, I guess you would call it, thing. They feel like if they were to just go and slap a new tread on what they've already done, then it's all for, they've done it. So logically, this kind of makes sense. They want to do something. Let's see where we can go with this. Let's push it.
So they reach back out to.
They reach out to Bob Ezrin.
That's right.
With the goal.
The idea is to elevate them. Elevate their status higher as a musical unit.
And this is before a concept album has even entered the picture.
They just want to kind of showcase how talented they are, how great musically they are.
Well, they just wanted to make kind of like what Russ was saying, just a bigger, grandiose thing.
I don't even think it was so much to prove that they were good musicians or anything like this. I think they just wanted to expand upon their concept because they felt like they're Kiss. And now they've been Kiss, and now they've been Super Kiss. Well, they can't just go back to being Kiss.
Right.
And see, and there's, not to reference another podcast, but there's always three sides to every coin. Where do you think the timeline in this goes? Because from all accounts that I've heard, read, FAQ, Paul's book, everything, they pulled in Ezrin first, and then the idea of the concept album came about.
Well, that's the confusing thing.
Exactly. So some people say that it was Ezrin's idea, he pitched it, and then Gene went with it. Gene's account is he was on his own, thought of it, brought it to the table. Ezrin ran with it and said, well, this is what y'all are doing. And Paul has kind of said that one too. So it's like that, I don't know. That feels like maybe just a whole lot of really close together timing with drugs.
Bill Aucoin's claimed it was his suggestion.
Oh, Bill's suggestion. Okay.
So they've all got
everyone
claims. So I think really the truth lies a little bit probably in the middle. I think it's a confluence of ideas all coming together, and I think they all kind of happened upon it simultaneously. Like, aha, let's just do a concept album.
Yeah.
It'll be The Wall.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Very much. Yeah. I think that was definitely weighing heavily on their
Yeah, so I don't think they necessarily wanted to show how talented they were, but more or less just show at this point.
And I think with Bill LaCoin, I think he was seeing it beyond that. I think he was seeing it as like, again, allegedly Gene's claim is that this was a treatment that he had written for a possible feature film.
Right, I've heard that account too. Because he had gone Hollywood at that point.
Okay. maybe so. Either which way. I think that, and that's, but Ezrin picked up on that concept and ran, was like, this is where we should go.
This is a great idea.
Yeah. Guys.
And we're not picking on him. This is something that everyone has very blatantly said.
Up to and included himself.
Yes.
But what also makes this very attractive for him is that in this production deal, he's going to get cut in on any percentages of a film and related merchandise. Mm-hmm. Bob Ezrin will.
Yep. Because he's basically doing the whole soundtrack for it.
So, and of course, Bill LaCoin's just like in his wheelhouse because this is what he does well.
He's in TV and film.
Yep.
Or came from.
And the merchandise, which they've cut him out of, which we talked about in the previous episode. But I'm
not
sure,
really, because we went down the percentages, and it was like, did he really?
Well, I mean, he lost the rights to the merchandise. They licensed it out to 20th Century Fox. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that in this kind of a deal, he would still get some sort of percentage. He's the manager,
Fox is like, shit, we didn't get Star Wars. We can at least get Kiss.
So they start in on recording this thing. It's done mostly in Toronto, which is Bob Ezrin's hometown. Mm-hmm. Everyone except for one key member, which is, of course, Ace Frehley.
Yes.
Ace has built his own studio.
Ace in the Hole Studios.
In the basement of his house.
In Connecticut. Much to the chagrin of the business managers. I think this thing cost like close to $500,000.
And he barely lived there like 2 to 3 years and then moved out.
And yeah, but it was a state-of-the-art studio.
Have you seen the current photos of it?
I've seen photos from about 10 years ago.
I think that's about as current as I've seen it too.
I heard it was turned into like a rec room or something.
It was. They took the entire recording area and just turned it into like a big old family rec room.
What else can you do with it? It was built to be an underground studio. It's like, what are you going to do with a bunker like that? But he's recording his stuff there. They're flying the master tapes between Toronto and New York, I guess, and then driven to Connecticut across the river.
And the sad thing is like the only reason both of these things are being done is so both of the major drug addicts in the band can be closer to their habits.
Exactly.
Ace didn't want to leave because of his habits, and that's why they had to go all the way up to Toronto for Bob. Yep. And it's just like...
Bob's just wanting to be close to his hookups, too.
And the sad thing is like, I'm sure in the moment they were just like, well, this is what we just have to do. But it's like when you take that couple steps back, you're like, you're pushing this hard for this record.
Yeah, well, I mean...
how much trouble we're going through.
They thought this was going to be a huge album.
Oh yeah,
huge. And it made. I'm sure in the moment they didn't think about it like that. They just thought, okay, this is what we need to get it done, and it's like, why not? I mean, why not? And so, but it's also interesting to note that apparently, whatever. Bob Ezrin isn't really actively involved in the recording of this.
Yeah, he kind of checks out midway through.
He develops the concept, he's probably there in the songwriting, but when it comes to the actual recording, he's kind of left it to Gene and Paul, essentially to self-produce.
Yeah.
And they're trading notes, but that's it.
Because I think the whole thing was like they had to they were trying to call him at home and he couldn't even be reached on the phone, so his wife was having to relay messages of what they need to do and different shit like this.
Yeah, he was that bad off too.
And this whole thing is being done in a very strict, secret kind of super top secret way because they really feel that they're gonna unleash something really, really spectacular,
right?
And they don't want to give up any of their secrets yet. They don't want to, hint that, what they're working on is going to be so magical and special. It's like, this is more than just a mere rock album. We're going to make something that's going to really put us on the map and stand the test of time.
And the critics are going to love it.
Everyone's going to love it. Everyone's going to love it because this is going to be huge. So huge that at some point, and I don't have the full story on this, but at some point, a boxing promoter named Lou Falsigno, is that maybe how it's pronounced? If I've butchered that, I apologize, was approached. They wanted to have him help promote a closed circuit grand concert special related, and you know, the idea is that they're going to tour behind this thing
with probably like a whole stage, like, you know, a stage production like Kiss would normally do, but with like the background of the story as they're, you know.
And they went back to the guy that designed the Destroyer stage, and his name has slipped my mind all of a sudden.
By the way, the story of the Elder, it's.
I think we'll get to that in the track by track.
Okay. We're probably getting ahead of ourselves. So, do we want to go ahead and do the track by track on this thing?
Well, I think one other thing to mention before we really go into it, because of course, as we're talking about kind of the writing process, a very interesting co-writer steps in for 3 of the songs on here.
Yep.
Lou Reed. Gene Simmons and Lou Reed are working together for this record.
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll get to that here in a minute. I will explore that a little bit.
Okay.
When we go into this, but
well, then let's roll track by track.
Do we want to go track by track and then discuss how it was received by the record company, or do we want to say how the record company received it and then explain?
There's a lot to that too.
My favorite story. This is in Paul's book, and I love listening to the audio book and hearing him explain it. He says when the record was done and they were playing it for anyone, he insisted on pure silence.
Yeah.
And that no one could reply, no one could react until the record was completely done, fitting for the artistic standing that it deserved.
Well, let's find out.
Now we're going to go through this now. Okay, no, actually, let me say this. When the record was finally finished and they finally previewed it to the powers that be and the promotion
team, after their pure silence.
Yeah. You know, it was met with confusion, if not outright disdain. Yeah, but not to their face, but behind the scenes, you know, like...
It was even suggested that they shelve it and record another record.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I didn't find that out.
So the label demands that the record be resequenced and put the punchier, fast songs up front and close the album with I guess it still does anyway. I'm not exactly sure, why they would want to do this, given that it's a concept and it's a story and it has this flow that it's supposed to have. But now they've got to be like, fuck that. Put that one song up in the front, and all that. And they had no power to fight against this.
Paul was saying it's the equivalent of taking a really bad book, ripping out all the pages, throwing it in the air, and then just cobbling it back together again.
Yeah, because in their vision, like the first 3 songs are kind of like not exactly steady rockers, but if you get the original album, it starts with The Oath. But I think as the remastered version that has the original track listing that they envision, I think that flows a whole lot better than
it's supposed to. I mean, that's the way it was supposed to be done. So we're gonna go through it that way, then, the way it was supposed to be ordered.
Like the way that we're supposed to silently listen and take it.
You can imagine you put your needle on into the groove, and you're like, fucking fuck yeah, Kiss, motherfucker, yeah, we're gonna fucking listen to Kiss. And
Kiss,
and it's like, what the fuck is this? Surprise!
It's a fanfare.
Well, you got a concept record.
This is what this album is going to be.
Just sets the tone.
So we get this fanfare thing, this medieval sounding,
epic intro kind of thing, big horns, the so you've got your chanting weird shit at the end.
So we're like, okay,
it's like, all right,
new.
It's gonna roll into something.
We're gonna roll into something because this is maybe it's like Destroyer started with that weird whole intro with the car and everything.
Maybe they're just
leading us into this.
Right.
Wrong.
Acoustic guitar and chimes for Just a Boy.
Oh my God.
Now, Just a Boy. Overall, like, okay, so how do we want to look at this? This is what's going to make.
I don't want to look at it. I don't want to listen to it. But because I mean, right now my eyes are watering. This stinks so bad.
But again, are we wanting to judge this on Rock and Roll Over, Destroyer, Love Gun, or are we wanting to judge this on the idea of a concept?
Well, you can
record?
let's do both. Okay, let's look at it as the idea of the concept itself right now, because it's not fair to compare this to other Kiss material.
It's not.
Yeah, I would agree. And
kind of like with Peter Criss' solo album, it's not fair to compare it against,
So I think we can all agree that this is not a good Kiss record.
Right. As far as an album overall,
I don't think there are any good Kiss songs on this record, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it too.
Well, maybe one. But
we can get to that. But so with that being said, across the board for the whole record.
How many times are we going to be sitting here going, but because this record is fucking weird, man.
It is, because there are like weird shining moments like in each song that like keeps it from being like horrible. And that's why I was going to get with I'm Just a Boy. I don't like this song, but if you have to look at it from a cinematic standpoint, Paul's vocal is very strong. He carries the tune. Is it a good tune? No. But it's a good, powerful vocal for this interesting thing they're trying to do.
It's a weird turn for Paul, too, because it's more like operatic, it's more theatrical, and not so sassy rock and roll anymore. We're trying to do Tommy.
He's no longer Stole Your Love.
Well, this might work for a stage musical.
Yeah.
But as a rock song, or even as a rock opera,
which is maybe a way to look at this too,
it's still a bit of a stretch. It's a little too, I don't know what the word would be. It's too theatric in a way, like not theatric like a cinematic theatrical, but like a Broadway.
Yeah.
It feels like Broadway more than it does, and not. Like the Who did Tommy, that doesn't feel like Broadway to me.
No, but
they did Quadrophenia. That's definitely not fucking Broadway. And he made the Tommy movie, which is fucking
weird as shit.
Dumb as fuck. But it's even still. I mean, I think the saving grace of this song for me is the solo.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of this is one of the things that I think Paul is pretty underrated as. His solos really service the song, and they're really good. And their solo in this is really good.
There's a lot of great. Another thing,
it's Paul playing that.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And the guitar tones on this album are really fucking good as well. Like I'll credit this album where it's due. Like the sounds on this are some of the bigger guitar sounds out of the entire catalog.
So this goes into the next track, Odyssey.
I think Odyssey's better than Just a Boy.
Oh really? Okay,
it's a weird arrangement.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's a weird arrangement. This is where they get Outside Riders, or the start of it. This is a Tony Powers composition.
Yeah, I meant to do some homework. I did do some homework on Tony Powers, and I didn't write any of it down. I don't know why.
I did a quick little thing. I'm sure Cap's done some of it too. Looked like just a lot of like bubblegum pop hits.
He had a hit in the 60s with that he co-wrote with Phil Spector called Why Do Lovers Break Each Other's Hearts?
Yeah, but didn't he write something else that was popular thereafter?
He had a couple of it was mostly 60s kind of like bubblegum hits. That's all I could find really on him. But I honestly didn't sit down and listen to him, but the way everything kind of like lifts and crescendos a little bit is very odd, especially for Kiss.
I think Paul's vocal in this sucks. He's trying.
You know, like the far off galaxy.
Yeah. It sounds like he's singing from his throat. It sounds like his throat's tight, and it's like it sounds like he's been taking voice lessons or something.
Yeah.
And what I liked about Paul Stanley's vocal style was that it was kind of raw and untrained, and still really strong and powerful. And from this point on, his vocal style will never, ever again be the same. And people like to sit there and talk about how great of a vocalist he was, particularly in the 80s. And I was like, no, he's fucking, it's too...
He just had good range.
He might have good range, but it wasn't Paul Stanley that I like. Mm-hmm. That raw kind of balls out fucking...
Take me!
Yeah, and that's gone. And it's never going to come back. And this vocal is so bad. It's just, I don't, it's, I mean, I guess technically it's a good vocal, but it just feels so restrained and so constricted.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, it sounds like he's like, constipated.
And see, and I can't disagree with any of that, but there's something about this song that always draws me in. Like when I go back and re-listen to it, it takes a little bit to get through. I like the way the chorus, all the choruses are with the swelling of the strings and the little dun,
the
dun.
once upon, once upon not yet.
Yeah. I didn't say it was good lyrics.
A child in a sundress looking at a rainy
child in a sundress looking at a rainy sky. There's a place in the desert where an ocean once danced by.
Yes. So on that note,
meanwhile, there's a bullet in the chamber, and I'm about to put it in my fucking skull.
Okay, so actually, on that
this
note,
is melodramatic hogwash with inane lyrics.
I'm talking
this is not
musically
epic.
right now.
This is not epic. This is fucking melodramatic hogwash.
It tries so hard to be epic, but go ahead, Alex.
Go ahead, Alex. Defend it.
You gotta take lyrics out of this. I ain't talking lyrics. But actually, starting at that sundress line, everything they do from that moment on musically is really cool, because you talked about solo. That's an awesome, I'd guarantee you another Paul Stanley solo.
You think that's Paul?
It's so simplistic, and it's that guitar tone.
Honestly, I think that's Ace.
It's not credited as Paul in the from what I read.
Is it not?
No.
I think that's Ace.
See, my head canon, like, because you know how you can sometimes imagine members doing stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Every time I've seen it, I've always seen Paul playing that, because it sounds like his little mini solos from his record, and like Sure Know Something and stuff like that. But either way, but I like how they kind of bring it back down. It gets really big. You've got the solo, and then those choruses that I already liked were even bigger, and Paul's not doing as much of that vocal thing that you didn't like. So that's the moment for me that it kind of lifts it back up and it makes it cool. So that's why I say I like it better than Just a Boy, because Just a Boy is just very plateaued the entire time. At least this has some swelling, some building, some different dynamics to it that make it more enjoyable for a concept.
Listening to it in this order, it feels like this is where Bob Ezrin stops. It's like I feel Bob Ezrinisms in Fanfare. I can hear it in Just a Boy, and I can hear it in obviously in Odyssey.
Right.
But once you go from there, a lot of that epic kind of melodramatic, all the lush string arrangements and everything, we never see that ever again in anything that Bob Ezrin does with Kiss.
Well,
because the rest of the record, it's not really there as strong.
Are you talking about on just this record or ever?
Ever with the, we'll get to that album at another time.
But there's a lot of strings on one song specifically.
I understand that, but I'm saying the Ezrinisms, and I'm not saying just in relation to Kiss, but I look at the Berlin album, I look at Billion Dollar Babies, I almost said Phil Spector, the Peter Gabriel album,
right.
The Pink Floyd's The Wall. All this goes out the window, and it makes sense now that you have the hindsight and the knowledge of knowing that he wasn't proactively involved. It seems like he might have started gung ho and then just sort of, I don't know if he just lost interest, and you can see where this gets. It peters off and it becomes more of a guitar oriented.
Yeah, Peter is off of this.
Yeah. But this goes into more of a guitar oriented album at this point from here on out. And let's see, we go into Only You.
First Gene song. It takes 4 songs to get into a Gene one.
This is one of the few things that works for the concept.
And I like this as a Gene song and as a Kiss song overall. Like, I can't find anything really wrong with this piece in particular.
I like it overall. The Tell Me Your Secrets part, it always kind of throws me off, because it's a weird transition back into his whatever.
See, I think that's an Ezra-ism, the Tell Me Your Secrets, and moment on the next song as well, but we'll get to that.
Well, I mean, but Only You is where I can pick up the storyline. I mean, if I'm following this in the order that it came, Odyssey just seems so misplaced, because I don't understand what's being told in the story here. And again, we know it's an outside writer, and it's like it's been force fit.
Russ, there's a child in a sundress.
I understand.
But he is like the character in the story.
So we get into the story here a little more proper with this Only You, and it works for the concept, I think, as a song randomly to just enjoy. It doesn't stand alone. I think what makes a good concept record is that you can take again, going back to The Who, you can take Pinball Wizard and it stands alone. It's a cool song. You can take Quadrophenia and you can take like The Real Me or 515, and you don't have to know what those songs are about. You can take them out of the context of their concept, and they stand alone as a good song.
Same thing with Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. That was a giant, huge hit single.
And they didn't have to know the concept behind it. You didn't have to know
the story behind it, But here, these songs are kind of essential to to what you needed to have told, the story.
Yeah, and the story is kind of vaguely based on the idea that the child in the sundress is the chosen one.
Is he? Is that the child in the sundress? See, that doesn't make no fucking. Why would he be wearing a sundress if he's a boy?
Maybe the boy is looking
just
at
a boy. Why am I wearing this goddamn sundress? Looking at a rainy sky.
You're the chosen one.
What? Because only you, motherfucker.
Tell me your
only you. Tell me your secret.
I don't have any.
You're wearing a goddamn dress. See, none of this fucking makes any sense.
I would imagine the boy is looking at a girl in a sundress, but maybe that's just my interpretation.
And he's chosen why? We don't really know.
Don't know. Okay, so let's go into Under the Rose. Let's go Under the Rose.
This is my favorite Gene song on the record.
With a co-write with Eric Carr, nonetheless.
There are elements that could translate to something a lot better here. I'm not exactly sure how, but in another context, I think that big riff part would be okay. Here it's kind of pat and disposable because it really doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't go anywhere.
Yep.
And, it's like this has the makings of a start of a song. And again, it's just, it just feels underdeveloped. And it's like, well, we'll tack it, because it kind of runs into from Only You into this as one big song.
Yeah.
And it's almost feels like they've just haphazardly stitched this together. Okay, we've got this.
I will say a cool rhythm to it. Because again, with it being a co-write from Eric Carr, he's like locked in on a groove and a vibe he wants. So it's like during the verses when he's almost doing that marching beat, and then like the slightly off-time kick during certain periods. I think that's cool. And then it almost feels like they were trying to reach the demon of Gene during the
choir
will you
part.
sacrifice that part.
I didn't really capture that when from that. The demon part, I can see that as being like, again, the elder speaking or
that's what
whatever.
I thought.
Well, yeah.
You know what I always visualize in my head when they talk about this shit? There was a live action Saturday morning television show about Shazam, Captain Marvel.
Yes.
And he would go and stand before the immortals. And
I know
they were
exactly
animated,
about.
right? Shazam is an acronym for Solomon. Achilles.
I was a Marvel kid. You're looking at me.
I know nothing about Shazam.
I can't remember they're all Greek gods. It's the first initial of all these Greek gods.
Billy Batson.
Yeah, and when he would go and stand before him, that was the animated part in the show. It would be like the live action guy, but the gods were all animated.
Yeah,
and I'm like, every time I heard this one, even when I was a kid, I just pictured those guys.
I've always pictured just like
because they talk like this.
I always imagined the
Will
big
you
tall,
sacrifice?
like the big tall faceless hooded robed characters that have like the arms just kind of like across their waist or their stomach area.
That was probably the image they wanted you to have. But I'm sitting there seeing, Zeus and
I'll also say
Solomon
that Under the Rose riff was one of the first riffs I learned that took like a lot of walking, and it felt like so intricate.
See, that's okay, but that's not the riff I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bouncing riff.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I always like the little walking riff.
Eric Carr played the acoustic on this as well.
Get ready for the 80s.
Yeah, I know.
I tried to do it without being self-conscious.
I resisted for a couple episodes knowing Barry's going to make an 80s compilation, but I just have to roll into it now.
You know what this song reminds me of? Y'all know the band Ghost?
Yeah.
You play this song next to a Ghost song. This is what it reminds me of.
I can see that.
Maybe that was an influencer of that band. I don't know.
Maybe.
So Dark Light. This is Ace's contribution.
It's like a Dark Light poster.
With a really, really weird riff, but I like it.
See, what do you think?
Again, like Cap said, weird riff. Only Ace song we get, and for Legend has this because, again, Ezrin was like, no, none of your stuff is going on this record, and he even made him rewrite the lyrics to this one in like a weekend.
I think they had to rewrite the lyric to fit the concept.
Because it was originally called Don't Run.
And, yeah. And that demo exists, but it's not really that radical different, is it?
No, musically it's still the same. It's just half-baked lyrics talking about don't run from your problems or some bullshit.
Yeah, let me still.
So this song, I think it's built off this hackneyed Jaws theme intro.
Mm-hmm. I know it.
And the solo is.
I don't hate the solo.
It's kind of uninspired though in a weird way because I mean we're talking about it's the era of we're starting to see the advent of the neoclassical. Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, and here Ace is just drilling on a single string note, and just doing these descending
little runs and things.
And it's like, it sounds cool. I like it.
Two things I noticed on the solo.
It just seems like, is this him trying to be Flash?
You know what? I think it is.
Because it doesn't really...
Well, that leads into the interesting thing I noticed about the solo. One, not related. I think the first appearance of bongos on a Kiss song.
Right.
No.
It's not?
And there's bongos on Almost Human.
Oh, that's You're right. Oh, yeah. But that
as soon as I say that, I just picture Gene over the corner. Doing the Babaloo. Right?
But
Gene
secondly,
Simmons, Babaloo.
You'll notice that a lot of Ace's go-to solos sound like this solo.
Wait, he has his little...
But it sounds like he put all his little things in the solo. Yeah. And that's why almost maybe this sounds like the quintessential Ace solo, because almost all his little tricks are in it. Even when you're talking about that hammering on that single string, especially near the end before the bend, I'm sure you saw it when you saw him live. He does that as part of his big solo right before the smoke bomb. So I think that's just his idea of being big and flashy.
I think the irony here with that is that overall on this whole album, it seems to me that the Paul Stanley solos work better for the songs that they're used on. Mm-hmm. And his solo doesn't work that well for his own song.
Yeah.
And, it like pains me to say that because, I mean, I'm a huge Ace Frehley fan, but, it just feels like he's not inspired by what he's doing.
Honestly, I just think it's the drugs.
Feels like this whole thing's kind of phoned in. It's like, well,
it kind of was.
I don't have any ideas, so I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to hammer on this string.
Well, we teased,
whatever.
We teased it before we dove into the track listing, but this is the first co-write on the record we get from Lou Reed.
Yeah, World Without Heroes.
And well, that's about Dark Light too.
Oh, Dark Light. What is he? I don't know how he on that.
He does. It says Frehley, Reed, Fig, and Simmons.
Anton Fig gets a credit too.
I'm sure it was a lyrical idea somewhere that they probably lifted.
I like that because I was sitting here going, because I've always heard about Lou Reed working on the record, but I've seen that, and I guess I've never really thought about it other than, well, yeah, this was a song Ace already had called "Don't Run." Where would he have given a hand with writing? So you know what, you saying lyrics?
Oh, it's lyric, yeah.
That definitely makes sense.
I'm sure all of Lou Reed's contributions to this, I'm sure, are lyrical.
Yeah.
World Without Heroes. I think this is where the two places where I can hear some sort of Lou Reedism, I guess, to a certain extent, but not grand, not any great. I'm a Lou Reed fan, so
I hear it more on his third contribution.
But this song is recycled from a demo that Paul had called "Every Little Piece of Your Heart," Oh.
Every little piece of my heart.
I want to hear that now.
If every little piece of your heart has a star on it, then it's been a good heart. Omaha, Nebraska. Lou was in recovery at the time, and I think he was trying to make some commercial inroads. He was doing stuff like the animated movie Rock and Rule. And I think, this seemed to him probably an opportunity to, like I said, he's trying to get some commercial standing again. His records were always critically successful, but not always commercially successful.
Right.
He was just about to make probably one of his best albums, called The Blue Mask, which was also, coincidentally or not, one of his heaviest. But in my notes here, I wrote, it's a little too smart for Kiss and a little too dumb for Lou. sort of like his Metallica collaboration.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's way bad.
It's way bad for Lou.
And
it's way bad for Metallica.
Way too smart for
Metallica's
Metallica.
already bad. Let's just call it for what it is, And there's that's kind of like Lou's Elder, because he believed that record was going to be massive.
Yeah.
But he took a concept that already existed, that no one understood. It was way too dark. Lyrically, and like I'm going off on a side tangent. There's a song on that album called Brandenburg Gate, and if you see Lou do that with his solo band, it's it's like night and day how much better it is. It's so fucking good. And you're like, how the hell did he fuck this up? Because he used fucking band. Metallica. That's why. So
Lou Reed is
I'm wondering how all those songs would have sounded with with his own solo band. But anyway, here he's contributing
0 for 2 on hard rock bands.
I think this is his acquiescence to trying to get some commercial status. It brings for income purposes.
Right.
It's crass, but hey,
gotta get that publishing money.
Everybody needs to get a payday, and certainly he deserved one. Well, guess what? He wasn't gonna get it.
No. Imagine, look at. Okay, pause a second. Think about how many people were gonna get side cuts from this record if it was successful.
No, I know.
Like a lot more, it seems like, than other records.
Well, it shows how many people believed in the project. Going into it, no one saw this as being a fail. Everyone saw this as being, okay, here's what we need to do, and this is what's going to do it.
And that's what's so baffling. Is it just the sycophant behavior of no one around them going, hey guys, this isn't really the move?
Because no one heard it. They were working in, like I said, strict secrecy. No one got to hear any previews until they previewed it for the record company. As far as World Without Heroes, this, in my opinion, is Paul Stanley's best recorded solo.
Yeah, it is a really good solo.
I'd agree with that.
It's so good. And, we'll talk about this again in a minute. This song worked, I think, really well when they played it live. The one single solitary time they played it live. And I think this song is actually a really good song, which I hated it when I was a kid.
But compared to everything else, it's pretty damn solid by itself.
And this is one of the few, and I think it's not that coincidental. I think this was chosen as a single because it works as a standalone track.
I was just going to say that it's one of the few on this record that you don't need to understand the concept to quote unquote enjoy the song. I'm not the biggest fan of the song. I don't know. I've thought about this one a lot. Honestly, this is the one I had the most problem with in my head, thinking about where I kind of ranked all the songs. I don't know if I like it because I've just heard it so much, or if it's actually because it's good. Because like you said, there is a version that was recorded years and years later that kind of put it in a new light. Kind of like what you were describing, the Lou Reed song with his own band kind of makes the Metallica song better. I mean, when they did this on Unplugged, Completely different take.
I forgot they did that.
And like you said, for the other live performance they did for this promotion tour, the only time they did it on this, it just works well live. So I don't know if it's just because I've experienced it in different aspects that I'm able to enjoy it, or if it's because it's just actually a good song. I don't know.
We'll come back to it here in a minute when we go over the.
Do we want to talk about the music video for it?
No, we'll come back to that too.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about it now.
No, we'll come back to it.
The Oath.
Just sounds
the only hard rock song on the record.
Pretty much.
Well, you know...
it's only like as far as like metal or whatever, they try to dive into that
this
speed metal territory.
That they usually do. It's a deceptively heavy riff, being that it comes from Kiss,
and then gets to a very fluffy chorus.
And
yeah, you talk about
in
how
another context this would be decent, but it's not a great Kiss song. And as a lead track, as it stood when they. The record company insisted this would be the song that opened the record. It's deceptive because it's not what this album is going to be.
It's not representative at all.
And, I guess as it was originally released, my perception was it sort of outlines what the story was supposedly going to be, or at least that was, that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, because you kind of get to I guess it was like a turning point in the story where he kind of comes of age and takes his oath with the elder gods or the elder council or whatever.
We didn't pick that up when you got it. It was like you started with that, and so now this makes more sense when you got to hear it this way. Oh, okay, here's where we are now.
Yeah.
Now this is the moment where he's taking up the sword and going on the quest or whatever the fuck this shit is. I don't fucking know.
And something interesting to note about this song that also is true about Under the Rose, Ace plays bass on it.
Yep.
Which I find interesting because again, what did we talk about at the beginning of the episode? He's sending basically, I was almost about to say files. Jeez. He's sending tapes back and forth, cutting his demos, cutting his stuff.
Ace plays on the Oath.
And Ace
plays bass.
He plays bass on it.
I did not know that.
And that's what just makes me.
I did not know that.
And on World Without Heroes.
Under the Rose.
Under the Rose and Dark Light. That's right. My fault.
Yeah, it's not surprising for Dark Light.
No.
Well, this, like I said, this is.
But just for the fact he did any bass aside from Dark Light is surprising to me, because it'd be like, well, if he's already just phoning in, so to speak, his guitar tracks, it seems odd he would go that extra mile and be like, yeah, I'll do some bass on this too.
And they may have been like, well, give him something to do.
Ace did nothing.
He can get hammered to play bass.
Why do all of a sudden I just picture Ace sitting in Connecticut and getting a phone call going, Ace.
He can't do it. His face just immediately just started laughing.
Ace.
This is Gene Simmons
of Kiss.
How would you like to play bass on the new Kiss record?
What the fuck are you talking about?
For a nominal fee. For $5,000, you can play bass on this. Oh man, Mr. Blackwell. I don't get it.
I don't. This is the one song that I think I only listened to all the way through once, just so we could do this episode. Every time I listen to this record again in preparation for this episode, I've honestly skipped it every time.
What does this have to do with the story? Who is Mr. Blackwell?
Is he the villain?
Is he the elder?
Point? Why is he called Mr. Blackwell? What does he do? Why is he bad? Why,
Why is he not well?
Yeah.
They can tell, but I can't. I don't know.
Why'd they keep the finger scrapes on the bass?
Well, I have a theory on that. Because at the very beginning, you hear... you hear that growling, weird bass stuff. I bet you this would have been his New Blood song.
I don't know.
Because that's what I hear that bass effect is. Because anytime he does his little finger scrapes on the bass during his blood effect, it has that kind of weird echoey vibe to it.
Just that gnarly tone too.
I think this is another Lou contribution. I think Lou musically, this could have been a Lou Reed song with different lyrics, and it would have worked really well for Lou.
That's my problem with this.
But this
stupid lyrics.
But the lyrics don't work at all. I think it's kind of a funk riff,
a little bit,
and I can see maybe shades of Another One Bites the Dust, kind of influencing that kind of vibe. Not directly, but the vibe, a funk vibe. They're like, well, that worked for Queen. See if we can't come up with a funk riff. And they have, we've talked about a lot of their stuff lends to an R&B feel anyway. And they can do that really well when they choose to. And they almost did here. I think if they had rocked it up a little bit, there's something that's missing.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's during the verses. There's just not enough going on. Sometimes you can have too much going on in a song. There's just not enough going on.
If this one had drilled along a little bit more as a hard riff, it would have worked even better.
A little more guitar.
Yeah. Without the stops. Yeah. It would have been, this has the potential. And again, it's like so much of this stuff feels kind of rushed and unfinished.
Especially the chorus. The chorus just seems like, oh fuck, we've got lyrics for everything except this. Because even like his tonality, it sounds like he just spat it out real quick. You're not low.
Let's see. Those
weird harmonies too.
I'm writing here. We need a villain. Let's call him Mr. Blackwell.
What rhymes with Blackwell? No, you're not.
Well.
God damn it.
And we can tell. Yeah, that's it. Deep, man. And now I'm supposed to believe that they allegedly sat around for 8 hours with notebooks and pens and not even picking up their guitars is the claim. And this is what they came up with. It took them 8 hours to come up with this. Fuck.
I think the three of us could come up with more compelling characters in 8 hours.
God damn it. Well, they said they did this for every day before. Whatever.
Who said this? Gene? Fuck that.
I think Paul made that comment. Escape from the Island.
Now, I've always dug this, but you saw how I stopped myself just then. I said, I've always dug this. But it's hard to call it a song.
Everywhere I go, everyone's got a big butt. Let's talk about your big butt, Alex.
What big butt? No, I've always dug the riff. I thought it was really cool. It's just I've never called this a song though. It's just it feels very half baked. It's just
exactly
a jam.
What I wrote. A half baked idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
This doesn't even translate as a possible riff for a proper song.
It's a half-baked idea from a fully baked Ace Frehley.
Completely unfinished, yeah.
That's a good one.
I wrote in my notes, it sounds unfinished. Should have stayed that way.
I think it had potential. I think the riff has a place. Like maybe if that was like the intro riff or like solo riff or something like that. I think it had It's
it has a solo riff in it, or solo part in it, and it's just
I don't like
good.
Well, then they go into the George of the Jungle bit, and that's not.
Well, and here's another thing: they've added sound effects here, and it's a sound effect of to me, it sounds like a horse carriage thing running wild in the mud.
Yep.
Wait a minute. Escape from the island.
How would they get on an island?
Well, how are they getting off the island on some horses?
Yeah.
Is this a horse carriage traveling across the water? Is there some sort of supernatural element that's supposed to be part? I don't fucking get it.
You hear gunshots and shit at some point, like almost like those kind of like things are like whizzing past your head.
I don't.
Where are they escaping from? Mr. Blackwell?
Possibly.
No, the island cap.
Yeah, the island. The island's got him.
The island of Mr. Blackwell.
That sounded like a Sid and Marty Krofft Saturday morning.
Meanwhile, on the island of Mr. Blackwell.
Okay, maybe if they had actually made this like a Hanna-Barbera Justice League kind of thing. Meanwhile, back at the island.
This might have worked a whole lot better if this had been their concept for their TV movie. But this whole thing just doesn't. So it closes out with the song I.
So I would guess by escaping the island,
He becomes
because this song is like the ultimate like we win song.
He fulfills his destiny.
Yeah, so like this song is like the celebratory.
You did it. You escaped.
We blew up the third Death Star. We're all dancing with the little midgets and little bear costumes moment. I believe in me. I did it. So it's like what happened?
I mean, are they going to play Stonehenge or what's going to happen?
There's a lot of Stonehenge.
He doesn't need no money,
and the boy has no name, so he's just boy. It's like,
and he doesn't need money,
job, boy.
He doesn't need no fame,
boy.
He don't need to get wasted. Or...
Yeah, well, I mean, I could stand alone as a single, and I guess was going to serve as a single. And I like the song. I really do. I think it's a pretty good song.
Oh yeah, even though I'm goofing on it, it's hokey, but it is.
It is hokey, but yeah.
It's the most Kiss-like. It's a little bit, maybe a little obligatory with the whole, the trade-off vocal between Gene and Paul and what have you. But it's also interesting to note that Eric Carr does not play drums on this track.
Nope.
I find that so odd.
They didn't feel he was nailing it, and they brought in Alan Schwartzberg, who played on both Peter's and Gene's solo albums.
But
we talked about him. He played with Mountain, played with lots of people.
Well, it's like we've got 3 musicians here at the table. We've listened to this record a good bit the weeks leading into recording this. It's not that hard of a drum beat. Like I can understand like if it came out years later that, and this isn't a slam on him, but like if Peter actually didn't play on Detroit Rock City and be like, okay, I can kind of see that because there's, maybe some intricacies and stuff that he just hasn't played before in that, position of him playing. But like, listen to this song. It's just the entire song. And I'm just like, it feels like any drummer worth their salt could get that vibe in, much less Eric Carr.
Well, I wonder who made that call because...
It seems like Ezra.
I would think Bob Ezrin did. I don't, but who knows? And again, he was high.
Yeah.
I'm high, y'all.
You won't get high?
He's like, what were you thinking? I was thinking...
Ricky, I was high when I was thinking all that.
I was like, what were you thinking? I was thinking, where am I going to get my next load of blow? I don't know. Overall, this is not necessarily a bad idea. It's not necessarily a bad concept. It's just badly executed. It's very poorly executed. I don't know if this could have been expanded enough to have created a double album, which is normally how these things work. But you can only imagine, as bloated and as pompous as it is as a single record, where this could have gone if it had been a double album. But it's only because it's just so unfocused and unfinished. And it's like there's the idea conceptually might have worked, but it just like in listening to it now in this order, the proper order, like I said, it feels like Bob Ezrin bailed out after the first 3, really the first 2 songs. He's like, all right, I'm done. Let me know how it works out,
Well, let me ask you guys this: what do you think of the Elvis impersonations on I that Paul's doing? Because he's admitted to it being a Elvis take.
It doesn't bother me. I never really thought of it that way.
I didn't either.
He admits to it being that.
You say it and I can hear it, but
don't need no money. I don't need nothing.
It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me.
I just find that such an odd little thing. That they would be kind of like emulating an Elvis vocal. That, it's like, I know they said they're always Elvis fans, and we even talked about in previous episodes around the Alive 2 era that Jailhouse Rock was a consideration for a cover. So, Elvis was kind of in the forefront of their minds. I just never thought it would ever get to that point where Paul's like, fuck it, I'll do an impersonation for a half a verse.
Well, he may have been clowning a little bit, and they just liked it and kept it. I mean, no, seriously, it might have been something like, watch this, and then somebody else was like, that was actually pretty cool.
We're keeping it, Paul.
Let's get it. Yeah. Hey, was Elvis here?
Yo,
no,
we got
Bob,
Elvis.
that was Paul.
We've got Elvis on this new record, man.
Elvis isn't dead. He's on Jamaica. He's in Jamaica with Tupac.
And then after that, we get the "You have been summoned by the yada yada."
Too much blow.
That's your opinion on it. Yeah, but then that's when we get that weird dialogue at the very end of the record with the door shutting, and it almost sounds like now the story's begun kind of thing.
Yeah, well,
are you sure that he is the chosen one?
We'll see. I mean, that could have led into a second disc, couldn't it not?
Could have.
I don't know. There was also talk that this would certainly demand a sequel, so obviously they wanted that. But there wasn't going to be a sequel. I think this thing doesn't work because it's too dark and somber to be escapist entertainment.
Which is what Kiss at its core is, or was to its big fan base when it was Super Kiss.
It's too dark and somber to be to present this story of hope. It just doesn't feel like that. It's not escapist entertainment. At the end of the day, Kiss is a New York band, and no matter how much paint and costuming they put on, they will always be a New York band. They are not a Los Angeles, Hollywood, sunshine and roses kind of band. They might live in Hollywood now even, but they just don't do that well. They never have.
They're New York boys.
They've got that New York kind of, whether they grew up middle class or even upper class, it doesn't matter. They come from an area that has its own urban quality, and it doesn't matter what walk of life you are, you're going to carry that with you, I think. I feels
agree.
like that to me, and it just, Hollywood just ain't their bag, man.
It's like we even talked about on previous records, how it feels like they were trying to get that LA sound, but instead they got a Studio 54 New York vibe. Yeah. So, I fully agree. You cannot take the New York out of these guys, especially right now. And something else interesting to mention that we kind of mentioned in passing, but didn't really, touch on it much. The one person I feel worst about in this entire situation is Eric Carr.
Right.
Imagine this being your first record with Kiss. You've seen all this stuff leading up. It's like, even though maybe their last two records weren't maybe the most groundbreaking or hard rock, it's like there's still so much more before it.
No, wait a minute. That's always been the narrative. Mm-hmm. And Eric was kind of the one that said, yeah, sure about this? Mm-hmm. And supposedly he was the only one that said anything. And maybe that's true. But if you know Eric Carr's background, he was not a heavy metal drummer. He wasn't even a hard rock drummer.
Right.
He played in disco groups. Mm-hmm. Now, he might claim some sort of allegiance to that, but even in the 80s, I can remember they were like, what do you like, Eric? And he's like, I like Howard Jones. Mm. I mean, so I can't see him being too far out of the loop on this. I think he probably was quite excited to be a part of this.
Oh, I'm sure he was just excited to be part of it, because again, that just is his character.
I'm just happy to be here.
I was like, he didn't have the clout to make those kind of decisions for him either.
I mean, that's the truth of it, and that's how it played out. And I'm sure where he probably really got snapped like a rubber band was not being able to play the track on I.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the note here? It says business manager Howard Marks refused to allow his company name to appear in the liner notes.
Yeah, because he saw this for the mistake that it was. I've got that in my notes as well. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Bill Aucoin envisions this as a giant album with all manner of tie-ins. And he likes these big ideas because he's a creative manager, and that's his forte. And he sees this as a bridge to rebuilding his relationship with the band. He thinks, so he's obviously wanting to take some certain amount of credit for this as being his idea. And when it works, it'll be that aha moment. We've loved Bill all along.
And real quick, I find it interesting. It seemed like when we were going through our Rock and Roll Over episode, Kiss shot themselves in the foot with that relationship, because they were going behind his back and reaching out to other people. Then they went and talked to him, and then he was like, no, I'm just not going to work on this record.
Which one?
Ezrin?
Oh, on
Rock and Roll Over.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about Bill Aucoin.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about with Ezrin, because I was like, I seem to remember Kiss kind of shooting themselves in the foot with that relationship.
No, this is Bill Aucoin's chance to kind of. He thinks this is going to reestablish his hold over the band. The album's released in the last week of November 1981.
So they took all. Paul just basically was talking about. He's like, this was the longest time they had not even been in the public eye, and it took forever for them to get this whole record even recorded and released.
March through September is how long it took to record the album.
And now, basically, the longest they stayed in the studio, it seems like, because usually they knock out a record within like a month and a half. Up to this point.
Well, the album cover, they didn't even want to put their name on it. Which I don't understand about bands that have this hard on about, we're going to make an album, it's going to be so great, we're not even going to put our name on it. Led Zeppelin,
yeah,
like,
we're
just going to put
sticks.
the 4 symbols because we're fucking artists, man. I don't understand the logic in that at all on any level ever. And obviously they didn't get their way. The album, obviously has the brown door on the front with the hand.
Contrary to belief, it is actually not Paul hand.
Stanley, apparently it's not Paul Stanley's hand. I think at some point Paul cops to saying it wasn't his hand.
In his book, he actually has a funny anecdote about it. He said it was supposed to be his hand on the door. He said, but the day before, he slammed his finger in the car door, like he messed up his hand in some way, and he got a purple nail.
Oh, okay, so he couldn't use his other hand,
right?
I don't, whatever. I'm not going to overanalyze that shit at all.
But I don't care. His funny anecdote on that was like he said, so it was like the day before they were supposed to do the album cover shoot, and he was like, that should have been an omen.
Oh, you did it wrong.
I don't know. There's pictures that exist of him standing in front of the door prop.
Which actually, thank you for saying that word too. Contrary to belief, that is not an actual. They didn't go to the streets of New York and find, because everyone talks about, I found the Elder Door. You're not gonna find the Elder Door. That was a manufactured door. They created that prop for the album cover. If anything, the closest you're gonna find is they found the original schematics years ago for it, and they made a duplicate, and it's at the Kiss Mini Golf. So they actually have a replica at the Kiss Mini Golf in Las Vegas. But
I did not know that.
Yes, but that is the closest anyone will have to being near the Elder Door.
You mean we're all going to go and take photos with our hands on it now?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, my hand. You could tell it was my hand.
With the tattoos and shit.
You could tell it was the Elder Door if it had a star in its crown. So this album cover is just a big brown blob.
It's a terrible fucking album cover, by the way.
And then you open up the gatefold, and it's a Knights of the Round Table spread with candles.
There's no pictures of the band at all.
Not in
the most visual band in probably history, and there's no pictures of the band.
Not in the inner sleeve, cover, nothing.
To be fair, these were the worst Kiss costumes of all time.
I'm going to get to that, but now as a presentation for the whole album, the whole artwork and everything, all of it to me theoretically is correct, but it doesn't relate the excitement or energy of an adventure. It adds to that somberness of what I'm talking about. It does not have any energy or excitement. This album is dark and somber.
Like, in a weird way, this album cover almost fits more of a Nick Cave-esque type record than a Kiss record. Like, do you see when like you keep talking about the dark and somber? It's like it almost fits more with a Nick Cave concept.
The hand on the door is red.
The right hand.
Hey.
Yeah. I'm trying to come up with a clever Nick Cave tie-in, but I've got nothing.
Under where the wild roses grow?
Yeah.
Under the
From
rose.
Elder to Eternity. So they unveil their new modern look. Now, they do this in September with an appearance on Mexican television, where they do it's supposed to tie into a proposed tour they're going to do. But however, they do a lip sync of oddly choiced Charisma. And I Was Made for Loving You. And they're in their new
costumes,
their new sporty look.
Sporty Paul.
Let's go ahead and talk about costumes now, since we're getting into public appearances. They chop their hair off. Paul's wearing like you said, a sporty fun purple bandana.
A headband.
The headband, yes. I actually kind of like Ace's costume.
That's the
Ace
only one I
isn't too
like.
bad. Like, even though he's in tennis shoes, give him his platforms back, and that would have been cooler. It was kind of harking back to his earlier costumes, it felt like. And then Jeans honestly feels like something out of D&D.
Yes,
He
it
looks
does.
like a D&D character. He looks like someone that should be out of, like, Lord of the Rings.
Like a castle guard
Yes!
or some shit like that with the ponytail.
Ponytail braided and everything
On the
else.
side.
And then Eric actually looked cool. He was in all leather and zippers. Like, he honestly had the coolest outfit out of all of them.
What's your take?
I hate Paul's. It's the worst. It's my least favorite Paul costume because of the headband. It's such a dated look. But he was going. That was. It's that whole thing we were talking about on Unmasked, where you just kind of picture him on a treadmill singing all these, montage songs, as I call them.
Yeah.
But,
and one other interesting design choice. Paul was still wearing heels, but they weren't the chunky platforms. They were almost like stilettos. Like the heel came to a point.
Like drag.
Yes, they were almost like women's heels instead of like the
that's
blocky.
probably what it was.
Well,
and,
yeah.
and he had the black pearl necklace thing that looked
butt beads.
what anal beads. He had the anal beads around his neck.
No, but I liked Ace's costume the best out of all of them. If I had to pick one that looked decent,
Now, personally, I felt this look worked. I thought this was where they should be and where they should be going.
Even
and I'm
Paul's?
saying this, I think minus, there's certain accoutrements
Right,
that Paul could have
accessories.
done. The necklace, and maybe
Yeah.
a different kind of boots. I understand the need for his headband at that time was because he was still self-conscious about his malformed ear. And I'm not going to, I would never crumb on that for a minute.
But I find that as an interesting design choice, though. It's like, if I'm going to cut my hair short,
It was
I still
interesting.
have to.
I think it worked. I think that they had to update.
Yeah.
They had to, or they didn't have to, but they felt like they had to because again, we've talked about this. All these bands felt like they had to translate into the '80s, and how was Kiss going to translate into the '80s? And I think they're doing this successfully as far as that look. I don't mind Gene's D&D or short hair, none of that. I thought all that was kind of neat at the time when it happened because I lived through this and I can remember seeing this on. When they did the Fridays thing, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But so this is your, the first look is, I guess they're starting to roll out some sort of promo material at the same time. I don't recall that, but they do the Mexican television thing.
Yeah, and that was like right as the record was coming out, or like right before, rather. Yeah, because
it was before. It was in September.
Yep.
And then they did this Flo and Eddie thing. When do we have any information when they did that?
Well, the first thing they did was actually December 7th. They did the Solid Gold performance.
Okay, did they do Solid Gold before they did the Flo and Eddie thing?
Yes, Flo and Eddie and a lot of the other stuff didn't happen until 82.
Okay, well, we'll go there. But let's talk. What about the videos? Do we have an idea when the videos were filmed?
I don't have a lot of info on the videos themselves, even though I really probably should have dug into it a little bit more because we have that big mystery behind the eye video. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
So if we're going to talk about the two videos, so the World Without Heroes video was very kind of stripped down. Like, I don't really think there's much in it. I know that the Kiss the Early Years photography book actually had a good bit of information about the filming of the two music videos, because the same photographer that kind of followed them around in the 70s doing those doing those really famous New York photos of them like just walking around and getting interactions with like old people. He stuck around kind of through the 70s, but he did come back for the shoot for those two music videos, and he kind of just talked about how there wasn't much to really say. They just kind of came in, did the thing, and then left.
Well, there's something to say, though.
About the eye one, yes.
Well, there's something to say about World Without Heroes.
Okay.
Because I never got to see the whole video. I don't think of that when it came out, but I saw a part of it on I think it was on Entertainment Tonight, but I may have seen the whole thing. I can't remember.
I know that Entertainment Tonight segment you're talking about too.
Yeah, but of course, much has been said about Gene Simmons' tear at the end of the video. And even us at that age, and this is 1981, so I was 10 years old by this point, was like, That's lame. Gene Simmons doesn't cry.
He doesn't cry.
Unless he loses a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And this was before the tattoo tier was a thing.
I don't know. I'm just saying, but at the same time, it was still exciting because anytime you got to see any visual of Kiss in person, not a photograph that was in 16 magazine or something, that was always really exciting.
Yeah.
And we had not yet gotten the memo where I lived that Kiss was no longer cool.
I was about to ask, your perception.
I would never get that memo until after I left my hometown, but a couple of years later. But, we didn't care. We were stoked about this album. We were like big time stoked about it.
Were you looking forward to the fact that it was going to be, a more hard rocking album than Dynasty?
I was 10 years old, dude. That didn't register. It was the new Kiss album, and I totally accepted it for what it was and how it was.
Okay.
It wasn't until I got older that I began to kind of understand, that was kind of weird. But the Eye video, they film a video for Eye that never gets released.
Yes. And it basically has what I would imagine the proposed stage would be if we want to use kind of the history of their past music videos, because if you look at the promo videos they did for Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, Hard Luck Woman, they used the stage they would tour it with. Same thing with the Sure Know Something, I Was Made for Loving You videos. Fast forward a couple years later, the I Love It Loud music video, they used the tank. So I would imagine that in this unreleased music video that eventually has now surfaced on YouTube, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, would have been roughly what the stage would have looked like, which would have had weird ice like things coming up off the side,
like a Fortress of Solitude.
Yes, exactly.
There's references to 2 different stage designs that were forwarded. They were designed in as far as blueprints, I guess, or whatever the word would be, the terminology. I don't remember exactly what they said they were centered around, but I don't remember it being. It didn't, the way I read
like
about
a Fortress of Solitude.
Didn't register that it would be what's in this video, but that doesn't make it, that's very plausible.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the video to me, now that we've seen it, is it's like, you've got this very brightly dressed, multi-ethnic
after school
audience.
special audience.
It looks just like the casting call was like, okay, you know what? Let's just get all of Central casting in here.
And it's like none of them look like rockers.
Nobody look. There's no long hairs. There's no.
I forget what show it was, but they were talking to some audience members. I think it was before an Eye performance, and it's just like 2 or 3 older folks that.
That might be the Solid Gold.
That might be the Solid Gold, where they have no clue who Kiss is. They clearly do not care, but they're just on TV, just answering questions.
That might be the Fridays thing where they
do Fridays.
They do a little bit of
Fridays,
that. The TV shows, the Solid Gold is. Well, before we even get to that, we'll finish up the Eye thing. We're laughing about that. I don't think it's a joke or even funny or odd that they have
guys.
No, that they have a multi-ethnic crowd. I've always noticed that at Kiss concerts. I think that's part of what I think is kind of cool about the Kiss fan base, is that it is so diverse, and it's not any one thing. It's not any, it's not necessarily a heavy metal audience. It's kind of a, it's kind of a
because at every show they just lift them up on their shoulders and carry them out of the arena.
But that throws back to the Who's video for Join Together.
Oh, okay.
They do the same thing, and I'm like, okay, well, I know where that comes from.
Right. But this didn't look like a rock and roll audience. They were just like...
because you can still be a diverse, multicultural audience, but still be a bunch of rockers. I remember distinctly, I could be wrong, but I have in my head, like, there was this really cute, like, black chick that had, like, double ponytail, but they're kind of like big balls, and then had, like, the big glasses. And she's just grinning ear to ear, smiling and clapping along, and I'm like, you wouldn't have actually been to the Kiss show, though.
Well, I don't know. At the end of the day, we talked about Howard Marks not wanting his name on the credits of the album.
Yeah.
He was right. This album bombs. It's the most expensive album.
Damn you,
that they
Mr.
have
Blackwell.
had. Yeah, and we can tell. This is their most expensive album to date, and its failure doesn't help the relationship with Polygram after negotiating such a hefty deal. Now, Howard Marks is probably just like, he's the one that negotiated the deal. But this, and we already talked about he's power playing against Bill Aucoin at this point. So he's both sitting on his hands going, God damn it. And then at the same time, he can sit there and turn around and go, well, I told you, And, of course, they're going to look at Bob Ezra, or they're going to look at Bob Ezra. They're going to look at Bill Aucoin with, a side eye now. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to feel like, well, he should have known better, even though it's their.
He's our manager.
But they were there.
At this point,
it's not fair for him to be blamed for this. At some point during this year too, I meant to look this up and I forgot. This is where my professionalism kicks in. So many B's. Bill Aucoin pulls off a major coup here. Mm-hmm. This is something that cannot be understated. Is he is able to secure registered trademarks. This is something they had been working on for years, and at the outset we're told impossible, you can't do it. But he's gotten their face paint designs as registered trademarks, meaning no one else now can use them.
Right.
Whereas a year prior, we talked about the Linda Carter episode having Kiss. That predates that trademark. That's why she could get away with it, or the producers that made that show got away with it. Now, if it were now, a year later, no one can do it because that belongs to the band. The logo belongs to the band. These are things, registered trademarks.
And this might be the biggest accomplishment that still, this is as important today as it was when it happened.
Absolutely, it's important because this is why they're able to use those. It belongs to Gene and Paul now.
Yeah,
and and here it was not an easy task. From what I understand, it took a lot of legal wrangling, and they were able to pull this off.
And those are probably the most valuable things that they have.
Singularly, absolutely. Or quadruply. Or, well, I guess there's 6 designs. But
I was going to ask if the Eric Carr design was trademarked too.
Absolutely.
Well, I was trying to look it up just to see if there was any information I could find just on the fly.
There's a patent on it, a copy of the patent.
There is, but what's really interesting is through the Bill Baker Ace Frehley archive, Ace's original contract from '79 is available. So they were starting this back in '79, trying to do the copyright for the or trademark rather for the makeup.
Yeah, they've been working on it for years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it says this is the very copy for Ace's makeup trademark registration and some relative litigation up with the same file, original red folder, yada yada. Yeah, so that original paperwork actually got sold at one point. I'd love to read that.
The claim is made often that the group doesn't tour because the album was a bomb, and it's like, why would you tour behind it? That doesn't follow the conventional wisdom of what touring was for. The touring was to promote the album.
Yeah.
The reason why they don't tour is because there isn't any promoters that want a Kiss tour at this point. They're seen as yesterday's news. And this album just solidifies that belief even further. So in a sense, it's because the album bombed, but no. They had came up with 2 stage designs. They had a tour proposal already in Mexico that fell apart, and now there's not a U.S. promoter that wants a Kiss tour. There's just no demand there.
And not only that, Ace Frehley's checking out at this point too.
And well, not quite, but close.
Almost. Very close.
Real quick, and we'll wrap this episode up because I guess we're getting kind of long here. We talked about December 7th, they record the Solid Gold performance. It's a lip sync of I and World Without Heroes, the 2 singles. And to me, it's sort of a surprise that they would even do this because this is fresh on the heels of the release. And it would seem like they are not yet aware this thing is going to tank. So Kiss is conceding to a lip-synced appearance on a syndicated TV show, which seems beneath their super Kiss perception.
And it was going to be redone as like a satellite appearance at the San Remo Music Festival in Italy.
Well, I'm talking about Solid Gold.
Oh, I thought you said, yeah, sorry.
I'm still on Solid Gold, but that's the next public appearance is that January 28th, 1982. They do that San Remo thing. That feels more like what you would think they would lend to that perception, live TV. At least it's something, quote unquote big, a syndicated show. And Solid Gold was a popular show. There's no doubt about it, but it still seemed beneath what Kiss would do. I could see them using the video for World Without Heroes or something. And
but hey, at least we got our one main performance out of them.
I
Because
never
of that
saw
show.
it when I missed. I just
Really?
Yeah, and I could see Solid Gold fairly regularly but I never saw that episode. I think I've seen videos of it since, but but the San Remo Festival, that's the satellite feed shot at Studio 54 in New York, or I don't know if Studio 54 was even still open at that point. It was the location of Studio 54. I don't know. And of course, famously, Ace does not make it.
Nope.
As he was either sick or he was sick.
Yeah.
I believe the latter, but I always giggle when I hear the news piece before. It was like, Ace, Gene, Paul, and Eric are here at to perform for the San Remo Festival. Ace Frehley could not make it with the flu.
Yeah. No, but you did it wrong. It's the Robin Leach voice, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ace, Peter, and Paul. Peter. Ace, Eric, and Paul get into Studio 54.
Ace had the flu.
Yes.
Ace had the first confirmed known coronavirus.
Yeah. Ace Frehley is ground zero.
He was like,
and Paul also says something really telling too. Flash forward all the way to 2022, where it is no secret that he's singing to tracks now. He actually says in that Studio 54 interview, he goes, it just goes to show the dedication of our fans that they would come out to see us, just do a glorified lip syncing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, boy,
that aged well.
I might have my dates wrong here. Maybe maybe that's right. I've got January 15th. I think I've got this backwards. I think the 15th might have been, I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
The 15th was
Fridays.
Yeah.
Now, Fridays was an ABC, it was their answer to Saturday Night Live, only it aired on Friday night.
Right.
And included in the cast and the writers were Larry David, Larry Charles, and Michael Richards, who would all find success
Seinfeld.
later with Seinfeld. Larry Charles and Michael Richards were also part of the cast. Larry David was part of the cast. Excuse me. Larry Charles was a writer.
I'm curious to see this now.
The show had a reputation as being kind of a hipper, edgier kind of sketch show than and it had the hipper, edgier musical guests. They had the Stray Cats on before their first U.S. record had been released. They had the Clash. They had the Plasmatics, for God's sake.
Oh wow!
Which is fucking amazing. If
I
you
know,
get to see
right?
it. I mean, just the idea of the Plasmatics on
TV,
on network television is amazing. And when they were still the fucking Plasmatics, not that watered down heavy metal bullshit she did later on. And who was responsible for that?
Yeah.
They had groups like Devo. Devo were on several times, and Devo were really cutting edge for what they were doing at that time. The Jam. So they had cool, edgy stuff on Fridays. So this made more sense in that, it was considered an edgy late night show, so it made more sense for Kiss to do this. However, by this point, I think Fridays was in its third season and was very close to being canceled. The ratings had completely tanked. So the only thing really notable about this is that it is the only truly live performances of any of the Elder material. And we get 3 songs. You get The Oath. You get that great version of World Without Heroes. and you get a slightly out of tune I.
Yeah.
But That World Without Heroes works really well for me. I think Gene's vocal on it is better than it's on the record.
And then Paul rips that solo.
The solo. The question I have, and I could not find this anywhere, and if anyone's listening that knows, who the hell's playing the keyboard on that? There is a keyboard player, not on stage and not pictured, but you can hear it, and they're playing live. So somebody,
maybe
Paul Schaefer.
maybe in my head, always kind of considered that to maybe be a track.
I don't think so. I think it's I think it's live. I mean, it doesn't sound canned. I think that was exciting. I can remember staying up to watch that. It was like hard to, we got to stay awake, but man, it was like, fuck, Kiss, man, on television. It was so fucking exciting because we, especially where I lived at that time was fairly an isolated area, and I could only pick up one television channel, but we stayed up late to watch it, and it seemed like we watched it on a small 12-inch, portable TV, and it was just exciting because it was Kiss on television, and you just didn't get to see that, and we felt like we're seeing something really special here, and then you go and talk about it with all your friends, and they're like, Kiss sucks. Ultimately, the album barely reaches the lower ranks of the top 100. It peaks out at 1975. Peaks out at 75 the week after the Friday's appearance, but I don't think that had any boost from the show because the week before it was at 76, so it got boosted one notch. And then 3 weeks later, it's completely gone off the top 200.
And it does,
3 weeks later.
I don't think it even goes gold.
Gone. I don't think this record has even sold 100,000 copies. There's no accounting for it other than what we know from the SoundScan era, and I think it's only sold like 15,000 copies, and that includes the remasters.
Woof.
It's just I don't think this record sold 100,000 copies. I really don't. I might be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. Kiss had become accustomed to leading where they wanted to go. Kiss kind of were their own anomalous thing. They built their own cult following. The fans came to them, and they built it until it grew into a fad. The fad is now over. So Kiss have been so accustomed to bleeding, and they've had the unusual relationship with Casablanca in that they had a record company that allowed them to virtually do anything they wanted to do. They do not have this with Polygram. But their fans have always followed them until now. They have not only, they not followed, they have left for other interests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From this point forward, Kiss will follow.
Yep.
Rather than the fans follow Kiss, Kiss will now follow. This will not change. It's over. There's no way to underscore it is over.
I feel like we're going to get into a lot more of that on the next episode too.
It's interesting to note this record seems to be enjoying a little bit of a critical and even, I wouldn't say commercial reassessment,
more like a cult resurgence.
But it's interesting. Like right now, Kiss Online is selling picture disc versions of the album, and one of the picture discs is a repro of the Japanese version, and it's sold out.
And twice. Because they
put out some more. Meanwhile, Rock and Roll Over is on a picture disc, and that has not sold out. A superior record.
Much.
So it's interesting. I think fans, there is a loyal dedication to this record now, however bad it may be. But this is the end of Kiss. It really is. I've always said Kiss can be capital KISS versus capital K, lowercase I, SS. Right. They're two different bands, and this is where that break is, and we're going to see it really underscored with the defection of Ace Frehley, and that'll be on the next episode of No Time to Turn. We hope you guys have enjoyed this one. It's been a lot of fun. So for Alex and for Cap, I'm Russ, and we will catch you next time on No Time to Turn.
Thank you for listening. Please insert another coin by supporting the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/somethinggoodnetwork.